Oversized guns used to help train soldiers at Camp Pendleton during the 1940s and 50s. It was easier to identify parts of the gun, and the larger size made it simple to see and point out individual components like the trigger, safety, magazine, and barrel. Soviet soldiers training under nuclear conditions during the military exercise Snowball, September 1954. It was a military exercise undertaken by the Soviet Army to explore defensive and offensive warfare and how to use nuclear weapons to break through enemy defenses. The Reichstag covered in graffiti, including names announcing that they were there after being captured by the Soviet Army, May 1945. Some of it is still there. It was hidden under paneling for 50 years and then rediscovered during reconstruction. There was debate over whether to keep it, but in the end, some was preserved. The offensive graffiti was removed. A chest X-ray in progress at Dr. Maxime Menard's radiology department at the Cochin Hospital in Paris around 1914. The doctor would later lose his finger to side effects from operating the X-ray machine. Soviet soldiers, so-called biorobots, cleaned the roof of the No. 3 reactor. At first, workers tried clearing the radioactive debris from the roof using robots, but the machines could not cope with the extreme radiation levels, so authorities decided to use humans. In some areas, workers could not stay any longer than 40 seconds before the radiation they received reached the maximum authorized dose a human being should receive in his entire life. American pianist and singer-songwriter Jerry Lee Lewis and wife Sean Lewis attend a pre-Grammy party at the Biltmore Hotel in February 1983. On August the 24th, Sean was discovered dead in her bed, 2 days after telling her mother she was planning to file for a divorce. Jerry Lee's fourth wife also met a similar end when she was found drowned in a pool. Boy on Krampus shoulders during a parade, Mitterndorf, Austria, December 1949. A demon-like creature from Austrian and Swiss culture. He is a companion of St. Nicholas, who brings gifts to children on December 6th. If the children were good, St. Nicholas will give them presents. If they were naughty, Krampus will punish them. First Lady of South Korea, Yuk Young-soo, slumps down after being shot by a North Korean sympathizer during an assassination attempt on her husband, President of South Korea, Park Chung-hee, on Korean Independence Day ceremony at the National Theater of Korea in Seoul, 1974. The president was eventually assassinated 5 years later by his close friend and director of national intelligence. A French Alpine soldier carrying a German machine gun and ammunition belt makes his way to a mountain post on the French-German frontier, from which he can detect the movements of the enemy, 1944. The symbolic moment of the 1956 revolution, when rebels tore down the statue of Stalin in the center of Budapest. The statue was a gift to Stalin from the Hungarians on his 70th birthday in 1951. The revolution led to the formation of a new government in Hungary. Bullet holes in the window of the Nigerian presidential Mercedes at the scene of dictator Murtala Muhammad's assassination on February 13, 1976. His killing led the Nigerian government to suspect CIA involvement, sparking student-led anti-American protests and fallout of diplomatic ties. 2 SS officers posing at Sobibor extermination camp with geese. The geese would be herded back and forth during gassings since their calls drowned out the screams. It was more to conceal the screaming from the SS staff and their families staying their side of the quarters. Psychiatrist Wilhelm Reich declared the existence of a universal healing and revitalizing force called orgone. He created devices such as this booth to capture and administer it. The device was designed to destroy cancerous growth. However, he was practicing without a license, and this led to his arrest. FDA officials were ordered to supervise the destruction of the accumulators, and many of his research was confiscated by the government in 1957. He eventually passed away in prison on November 3, 1957, at the age of 60. Negotiations between the zoo director and escaped chimpanzee Belgrade, 1988. He managed to escape twice in the same year, but was caught each time. Vuk Bojovic, Belgrade's zoo director, was called for negotiations since he was the only person that Sammy trusted and convinced the chimp to go back to the zoo. Sammy died unexpectedly in 1992 and has a bronze statue at his burial at the zoo. Germans in Prague, evicted from their homes on Strassmayer Square, wait to be deported to Allied-occupied Germany, 1945. Germans and Hungarians were disenfranchised, lost their citizenship, expropriated, and eventually expelled from Czechoslovakia due to their country's actions in World War II. A group photo of officers from the Northeast Anti-Japanese United Army, a mixed Chinese-Korean force which fought a guerrilla war against Imperial Japan in Manchuria between 1936 and 1945. Future leader of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, is second to the right in the first row as a captain. Camp guards at concentration camp Buchenwald, who were captured and beaten by the prisoners on the day of liberation, April 1945. The guards are dressed like this because they tried to disguise themselves as civilians and sneak away. Ada Blackjack joined an Arctic expedition team consisting of 4 men. She spent 2 years surviving alone on Wrangel Island, a remote island north of Siberia, and was the only member of the team to make it back alive, 1921. After a year, they ran out of food and safety supplies. The men attempted to cross the 90-mile frozen Chukchi Sea to Siberia for help and food, leaving her behind. They were never seen again. She and the cat, Vic, were rescued on August 19, 1923. Yossi Ginsburg, the day he was found, having been lost alone in the Amazon for 3 weeks, 1981. Yossi and 3 travelers ventured into the Amazon rainforest but split due to disagreements. He and his partner built a raft to sail down the Beni River, but the rapids destroyed it, leaving Ginsburg stranded and alone. One of the travelers was never found. Frank Sinatra Jr. photographed in 1963 after being freed by his kidnappers. Sinatra was 19 years old at the time and was performing at a casino when the 3 kidnappers entered his dressing room, pretending to deliver a package, and took him away. He was released 2 days later after his father paid the $240,000 ransom. They were eventually caught and convicted. A hostage on a bus, 174 people were forced to write messages to onlooking police and media in Rio, Brazil, in June 2000. The message says, "He is crazy. He's going to kill me." The incident was caught on live television and lasted 4 hours. An ascetic with a metal grid welded around his neck so that he can never lie down, late 1800s. There's a belief in Vedic religions that if you can deny bodily desires enough, like lying down, it can deepen spiritual practice so that you can leave the body and its suffering behind. A German woman cries amongst the rubble after Allied air raids bombard Dessau, 7th March 1945. John Christie covers his face as he arrives at court in London in 1953, charged with the murder of his wife, Ethel. He was eventually revealed to have been a serial killer. He got an innocent person convicted and killed for his crimes before John was caught. He went on to kill others in the same building they lived in until he was finally caught. Mugshot of John Wojtowicz, who unsuccessfully tried to rob a bank in 1972 to pay for his wife Eden's gender reassignment surgery. He based his plans on the movie, The Godfather. His robbery attempt failed, and he was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison, of which he served 5. His story was later turned into a movie called Dog Day Afternoon. For the rights to his story, he was paid $7,500 and 1% of the movie's net profits, which he gave to Eden. After her operation, she married someone else before dying of AIDS-related pneumonia in 1987. A Sudeten woman from the area, that is now the Czech Republic, salutes the conquering German forces while crying at the fall of her people to the Nazis around 1942 to 1945. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, signing the instrument of surrender of the German Wehrmacht at the Soviet headquarters in Berlin, May 1945. After the trial, he was sentenced to death and executed in Nuremberg prison by hanging in 1946.